The Town of Salem franchise holds a very special place in many people's hearts, including mine. I've played it for the better part of a decade, and it's really sad to see this franchise withering away. Many people don't know the controversies or even the history of the franchise, unless you search obscure Reddit posts, PHP posts, and videos like these.
Go really bad for that guy, first off.
That's why I have made this video. I want to showcase how Town of Salem went from being the game that defined the entire social deduction genre to now only having 3 employees left working on the game. After finishing business foundations at the University of Texas at Austin, Joshua Brittain would meet Blake Burns in the middle of 2012.
You son of a bitch.
Blake was a computer science major and a game developer who had been jumping from company to company, working on games in the shadows. Both of them had a love for the social deduction and over-the-board genre, which led to Blake one night proposing the idea to Joshua for a mafia/werewolf style game.
Look, yeah sure. The mafia game is too boring, it only has 2 roles. What if we expanded it? The town can have roles that investigate for clues, protect from attacks, even kill at night. And the mafia could have roles that deceive the town, and that can give TRM an advantage if played correctly.
It was simply brilliant. Joshua was captivated by the vision Blake had for the most unique social deduction game made thus far.
Yeah,
Mr. Blake.
yes, science!
And agreed to help him in realizing it. But they had a massive problem. They were shit broke. Joshua had only recently gotten out of university with no job. This was pretty much his first ever business adventure. So Blake came up with the idea to start a Kickstarter for the project. But investors wouldn't be swayed with just a concept. They proposed that they work on a small demo of the game to showcase the potential this idea had. For the next year and a half, they worked silently on programming the game. Blake, in the meantime, paid for the expenses out of his own pocket, while Joshua also got a job to support their funding. On January 2nd, 2014, they would found Blank Media Games LLC so that they could hire artists and a sound composer to give the game life. And by February that same year, the rough build of the game was complete. The game was called Town of Salem.
Hey Kickstarter, this is Blake Burns, co-founder of Blank Media Games. We are a game company startup based in Austin. We were brought together by our mutual love of the party game Mafia.
With 29 roles, 2 main factions that are competing against each other, the Town and the Mafia, and a wildcard 3rd faction called the Neutrals. There was a day phase where people could collectively discuss information they had. There was a judgment phase where people could be voted and lynched. And the night phase, where people could use the abilities of their role and where Mafia could discuss their plans. Town of Salem would be released as a browser game. And to top it all off, it was completely free. And so, Blake opened the fundraiser, and they all waited in anticipation to see if their 2-year-old brainchild would finally succeed. It was a huge hit. The fundraiser received $17,000 after the first 30 days of it being opened. It was time to get to work and finalize polishing the game up. On September 13th, they had opened another fundraiser, this time for a Steam release of the game.
Hi, I'm Blake, the Godfather.
And I'm Josh, the serial killer. Since we've opened up the game to the public, the players have been asking for 3 major things: mobile, Steam, and getting the game into other languages. That is what this Kickstarter is all about.
The original goal set was $30,000, but after 35 days, it reached $110,000. At the end of the year, on December 14th, the game was released on Steam. Blake and Joshua had done it.
Yeah! Hey, come on, baby! Come on! Yes! Come on! Ah!
The train was far from its station. They had way more plans for this game. 2016, there had been background work on a mobile port of the game. And in the same year, on April, they received just shy of $400,000 to release a Town of Salem card game. It will suffice to say that the players were eating good, as in 2017, a new Coven DLC would be added to the game that expanded the role count from 29 to 50, alongside a new faction called
The Coven.
and so much more content. Gamasutra will release an article that stated that the game had over 5 million registered users, meaning it was the most popular social deduction game ever. By 2018, they had finished the mobile port of the game. To say these boys had won the lottery would be an understatement. The game would be turned into a franchise with 5 new titles, the involvement of Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos in the production, even an appearance in the Marvel DC universe, 15 movies and films centered around the game. The common consensus of the community is that the golden era of Town of Salem spanned from 2014 to 2017. Remember that mobile port that was released in 2018 I mentioned? Yeah, it was really bad. You received ads after playing every single game, and it was a pain in the ass to navigate the UI. The only people who unironically played it were people who didn't have a computer.
Side with
Premium?
Nah, unfortunately.
Premium.
Coming soon though.
Premium.
coming
I've
soon.
been playing.
Also, in 2018 would be the infamous Town of Salem data breach. A group of hackers managed to decrypt the data of 7.8 million users, all thanks to lazy security.
You know what we did? We literally looked up the usernames of admins in data breaches. Sure enough, an admin and a site owner reused the same passwords and we logged in.
People who didn't change their passwords reported losing their accounts and or emails, alongside their payment information and personal information being leaked to the dark web. The security was fixed, but the damage had already been done. Now, I do need to point out that this next bit is alleged. I couldn't find any concrete source, but the reason I'm mentioning it is because I do vividly remember this happening, because I was an active player at the time and I heard the news. Somewhere in 2018, Blake and Joshua had decided to host a party and invited everyone and anyone who would come along. It was meant to be a sort of celebration for how far the game had come and to thank the community for being a part of it. Apparently, everything was free. The attendees didn't have to pay an entrance fee nor any fee of any kind. And the party was rumored to be very expensive. The guests were offered free nights at the hotels, and it all came out of the company's pockets. After it was all finished, Blake and Joshua realized that they had just blew most of the company budget reserved for the game.
Я sure where the fuck is my Eyepatch?
He spent it all.
This forced them to fire and let go most employees, which resulted in a lack of dedication to Town of Salem. The game stopped receiving frequent updates and balance changes. There were mostly bug fixes and renewals of the ranked seasons. Apart from a few tweaks and changes, the game is still the same from 2018 to this day. Nothing has changed. And if you go on the Steam page of Town of Salem, you can see that the very last update ever made to the game was in 2022. By then, all official support for the game had been completely discontinued, and the trial system that handled reports and banned players was handed over to community members. I genuinely cannot state how of a decision this was. The community moderation consisted of players who all collectively had 100 hours in the game, which led to moderators with little to no comprehension of the game mechanics or game meta banning people with thousands of hours in the game. And that's a permanent ban, with no appeal. Flop after blow after more terrible blows, it was suffice to say that the franchise was at rock bottom. But apparently, it had all been for a good reason, as Blank Media Games had actually been cooking up something in the background this entire time. In 2020 is when Among Us blew up. It was so popular you could not go a day without seeing it somewhere in your life. And a certain mod for Among Us was made, called Town of Us. It included roles from Town of Salem, and it made Among Us even a more popular video game. It was genuinely more popular to play with the Town of Us mod more than the vanilla experience. Later, roles would be added to the vanilla Among Us game. And somebody must have seen all of this in the Blank Media Games department and thought,
they stole our fucking concept, and have become more popular than we could dream of being.
We need to do something about this.
And so they did. This led to the birth of an idea called Traitors in Salem. Concept was announced in April 2021, and it would pretty much be Among Us in Town of Salem. This was the big brain play that would finally restore the franchise's popularity back on the market. Teasers and concepts would be revealed to the community, alpha builds for YouTubers and dedicated Town of Salem players. In April 2020, it would be fully released. Now, we don't talk about Traitors in Salem. You see this guy? This is what happened to him after he talked about Traitors in Salem. Gone. Disappeared. In fact, he never even existed in the first place. Well, you see, after the official release of the game, there was never any updates made to Traitors in Salem. This is because the game literally died 1 month after the release. The game had only 2 factions, the Town and the Traitors. All evil roles were simply labeled traitors, and it made for a very boring game. The servers were completely shut down for the game, and it remains dead to this day. But hold on, apparently it was a double bluff. This game had actually been a placeholder in a test field for a brand new game that they were going to make. Definitely not, because they had sunk too much money into this and had to find new ways to reuse the assets. All would be radio silent from the side of Blank Media Games until the 21st of April 2023. It would be announced that the original Town of Salem would be receiving a sequel game. Completely new roles, 51 of them in fact, new game mechanics, whole revamps of old roles, new factions, and so much more. The main antagonist faction would be just the Coven. The alpha for Town of Salem 2 would be released in May, and the game looked absolutely stunning, and it was genuinely fun. When it was finally released in August, it surpassed the predecessor's all-time concurrent player count in just 1 week. It also grossed more money than the Coven DLC from the first game. I began playing Town of Salem 2 somewhere around May of this year, and I have to say that it is far better than the original game. It introduces a whole new gameplay different to the first one, which is a good thing. It is 2 separate games with unique playstyles that are both good on their own. Still, I prefer the gameplay of Town of Salem 2 far more than the gameplay of Town of Salem 1, as one of the major things is that it improved on the issues the first game had, and also because Town of Salem 2 gets actual updates unlike the first one. But you're a smart fella. You remember that in the beginning I mentioned how the franchise would fall from grace. So what happened? You see, it took Town of Salem 1 3 years before it finally started to decline. But for Town of Salem 2, it was less than a year. The gameplay gets repetitive and boring. but that's a constant variable that pops up in every game. It's not specifically for Town of Salem 2. The actual problem is that no money was spent on advertising. Back in the day, you had content creators like PewDiePie, Markiplier, even Jacksepticeye making videos on Town of Salem 1, which is what actually led to the popularity of the whole game franchise. But most people never even knew that Town of Salem 2 existed. The only people to create content on it was old Town of Salem YouTubers like Pipetron, Shadowbeats, and also some random YouTubers from the Among Us era that fell off. And you know that the developers were getting desperate with money when they introduced a battle pass to the game. It all came to a crash on June 5th this year, when an announcement was made in regards to a new publisher that will be acquiring the franchise called Digital Bandidos. It was very evident that the money was only going down for the company. Other than the introduction of a $25 battle pass, why else would they be working with a new publisher? Some people actually did some digging on this new publisher, and they found out that they were only established 2 months ago. And to top it all off, they had an AI-generated profile picture. If you don't know, in showbiz, these are clear red flags that this is pretty much a cash-out arrangement. While digging around some more, it was discovered that all but 3 employees have been fired, laid off, including the lead artist for the game. All of it's really sad. One of the most beloved game franchises has died, all because of poor management and poor use of money.
Intriguing new evidence in the murder trial of former New England Patriot.
Hello, Town of Salem community. I wanted to formally introduce myself as well as Digital Bandidos. My name is Sydney and I am the community manager for Digital Bandidos. Digital Bandidos is a new game publishing company that is formed of previous versus evil founders and employees carrying our industry experience and knowledge from our time at versus evil and other past experiences into this new company. We have decades of experience across our team and specifically indie games. Digital Bandidos is new, but we are excited to pour our passion and combined experience into supporting fantastic indie games and their developers. It's very early on for us, so please note that we are still establishing our branding. Things you see now are more than likely just placeholders. We are not here to shut the game down. Quite the opposite. Our goal is to add more content and more platforms.
The creators behind Digital Bandidos actually have years of experience in the gaming industry, and they are genuinely good at their jobs. It's just that they have recently made Digital Bandidos. While I have been painting a negative picture of the Town of Salem timeline, in actuality, Digital Bandidos could be the one to save it. It has been confirmed that alongside Town of Salem 2 now being slated for improvements, so will Town of Salem 1 be slated for improvements. While the entire franchise is currently at its biggest rock bottom, I believe their choice of working with Digital Bandidos is the best decision they have made so far. The future finally looks bright for Town of Salem.